There's a moment I remember sitting in front of my PlayStation, loading up Saga Frontier for the first time, and the game just asked me to pick a character. One of 7, and none of them, I would later find out, had any idea the others existed. I had no idea that was allowed. That's the thing about the PS1 era that gets buried under all the talk about the genre's greatest hits. Some of the developers working on this console were actively trying to figure out how to break them. Not in the bad sense. Rather, break the way a sculptor carves statues. 13 games, 13 different ways someone decided the rulebook for the genre didn't apply to them. An RPG usually has a protagonist. Saga Frontier doesn't. It has 7. You pick what to start, play their story, which might last 5 hours or 15 depending on who you choose. And when it ends, the game ends. The other 6 heroes exist in the same world, visiting some of the same locations, living completely parallel lives that you will never see intersect. What makes this wild is how little the game feels the need to explain itself. The battle system hides a combo trigger mechanic that nobody tells you about. You discover it by watching which moves chain when you stack them right. The skill absorption system in certain scenarios lets you take monster abilities outright, literally building a fighter out of the things you've beaten. Every scenario has its own tone, its own pacing, its own weird structural priorities, and the free-roaming structure means you can wander into a dungeon you're wildly underprepared for, and the game will just let you find out. I started with Red because he looked the most like a conventional hero. He has a superhero alter ego, a villain to chase. That made sense. Then I played Ricky's scenario, a monster character hunting magical rings, treated with exactly the same narrative gravity as everything else. And I realized this game was genuinely committed to its own chaos. But it's a double-edged sword. If you pick the wrong scenario first, you might give up before you understand what you're actually holding. Not every path is equally strong. Some feel like rough drafts next to the best of them. But if you pick the right one, you'll be downloading walkthroughs at midnight, trying to figure out what you missed. Legend of Mana hands you a blank map and artifact tiles, and it tells you to place them. Towns, dungeons, forests, temples. You decide where they go. The placement affects which content unlocks and in what order. You are quite literally constructing the world before you explore it. This should feel like a gimmick. It doesn't. It's the most interesting structural idea in the entire Mana series and one of the most undervalued world design experiments the PS1 ever produced. The combat is real-time action, fluid, responsive, satisfying to learn. You can raise monster companions with unique growth paths depending on how you train them. Weapon forging lets you build gear with elemental affinities and hidden abilities based on the materials you combine. There's a gardening system where magical seeds grow fruit that affects monster growth and weapon properties. The story doesn't have one central through line, and that's a design choice, not an oversight. Legend of Mana delivers dozens of short, self-contained arcs instead of one escalating plot. Some are funny and some are tragic. The Jumi arc hit me in a way I genuinely wasn't prepared for. Quiet, melancholy, and completely unhurried in how it lands. But if you need a clear narrative engine pulling you forward, this game will make you feel like you're drifting. That's the point, but it's a real limitation for a certain kind of player. Come with the right expectations, and it's unlike anything else the console ever offered. Azure Dreams doesn't know what it is, and that's exactly what makes it work. On paper, you climb a procedurally generated tower, die constantly, carry only what survives death, rebuild your monster team from scratch every run. Classic roguelike structure. Standard loop. But then you go back to town, and the town is a life sim. You have a house. You can renovate room by room. There's a girl next door who thinks you're interesting, and multiple romance paths with different townspeople. You can build a basketball court. You can install a pool. I'm not joking. The genius is that the two have genuinely improved each other. The tower runs are tense and punishing, and when you die, you feel it. But you always come back with something: knowledge, progress, materials that move the town forward. Death isn't failure. It's a loop. And the life sim gives those run stakes that pure dungeon crawlers can't manufacture. The combat inside the tower is thin, and the life sim side is clearly the secondary design concern. If you need mechanical depth in both halves, this will frustrate you. But as evidence that someone at Konami once had an extremely creative afternoon, it's delightful. An RPG has one ending. Star Ocean, the second story, has over 300. Not 300 wildly different stories, but 300 variations on outcomes, relationship fates, character endings that shift based on how you spent your time. The game is paying attention to everything you do. Every conversation, every town visit, and every moment you could have spent with a companion, but didn't. The private action system is where this lives. Enter a town. The party splits automatically, and you can trigger one-on-one moments with companions. Short conversations, shared memories, friction, or warmth that most RPGs never make room for. Those accumulate into relationship meters that shape the finale and the chemistry of every fight in between. The real-time combat is fast and committed. You control one character directly, AI handles the rest, and you can cycle between them mid-fight. The item creation system is genuinely absurd in the best way. Cook meals, forge weapons, write books, compose music, mix potions, all of which produce things that actually matter. If I'm being honest, this game has the most obtuse skill investment system I've ever navigated. Putting points into the wrong things early locks you out of creation paths for the entire run. The game will not warn you, not even a little. Look up the crafting skill trees before you start. Play everything else completely freehand. That's the version of this game you want. Action RPGs should be accessible. Alundra looked at that rule and decided that it was wrong. This is a top-down action RPG in the Zelda tradition. You enter people's dreams, solve puzzles, fight bosses. That description makes it sound approachable. It isn't. The puzzles in Alundra are some of the most brutal, uncompromising design decisions I've encountered in a game that technically wasn't trying to be a puzzle game. I spent 45 minutes on a single Switch puzzle in the second dungeon. I'm not proud of this. I'm also not exaggerating. What they understood, and what makes it still worth playing, is that difficulty built from puzzle design rather than stat inflation feels like respect. When you finally break through a rune that's been destroying you, you feel it differently than any boss fight. You solved it. The game didn't adjust. The story is darker than you'd expect too. People die in this game. Frequently. Characters you've built relationships with. Alundra's village has a genuine body count, and the game doesn't soften it. There are some puzzles cross into unfair territory, and the platforming collision detection is unreliable in ways that punish skill rather than test it. Save at every single opportunity. Push through, and this is one of the most rewarding action RPGs the console ever produced. In Final Fantasy VIII, leveling up is counterproductive. Enemies scale with you. The stronger you are, the stronger they are. This isn't a quirk, it's the premise. The junction system is how you actually become powerful. Draw magic directly from enemies mid-fight, pulling quantities of spells from them like a resource, and attach those spells to your stats. Junctioning 100 Thundagas to your magic stat changes your magic. Junctioning 100 Blizzagas to your HP does something completely different. Every character is a blank slate built out of what you've taken. The system is either the most expressive customization the mainline series have produced at that point, or an elaborate trap for anyone who doesn't do the reading. Sometimes both, depending on which hour you're in. I bounced off this game twice before it clicked. The opening hours throw the junction system at you, while also establishing a military school, a scarred rival, a mysterious sorceress, and a political assassination plot. It is a lot all at once. When it clicks, when you realize you're not playing a traditional RPG, but a magical resource economy, wearing one as a costume, it becomes something genuinely distinct. The system rewards obsession in a way that most RPGs only pretend to. The story has aged unevenly. The time compression arc in the third disc is either ambitious or incomprehensible, depending on your patience for abstraction. Both of those things are simultaneously true, and I've stopped trying to pick a side. If you're still here, I genuinely appreciate you for it. Drop in the comments which of these you've actually played, or tell me which one you started and never finished because it was just too weird. And if you're not subscribed yet, that button genuinely keeps this channel running. Valkyrie Profile gives you a timer. Chapters split into periods. Those periods count down whether you use them or not. When they're gone, they're gone. You play Lenneth, a Norse death goddess tasked with collecting recently fallen warriors and training them for Ragnarok. Every soul you recruit has a full backstory, a death scene, and a life summary. The people and relationships they left behind. You are a harvester of the dead, and these are the dead you're choosing to harvest. Every character you recruit is someone's tragedy. The time limit is the pressure that makes everything else matter. Spend too many periods in one dungeon, and you might miss a character entirely. Miss too many, and the final battle becomes a wall. The game doesn't warn you. The game trusts you to feel the weight of your own decisions. The combat maps each party member to a face button. Press them in sequence to chain attacks, time hits to build juggle states, and when everything connects, when the combo locks in and the finisher triggers, you feel it. It's fast, tactile, and rewards practice in a way that's rare for the turn-based genre. The sprite work is still beautiful. The score is one of the finest things he's ever written. And the game has 3 endings gated behind choices you'll have no idea you're making on a first run. The true ending is near impossible to reach blind. That's the price of its trust. And in context, it's exactly the right price. Genres stay in their lanes. Parasite Eve broke this so thoroughly that people still have trouble describing it 25 years later. It's a third-person RPG. It's survival horror. It's a police procedural set in a New York opera house on Christmas Eve, where the main character discovers she might be the only human on the planet resistant to spontaneous mitochondrial combustion. The combat runs on an active time system that pauses when you stop moving, but lets you reposition in real time between turns. Every fight is a spatial puzzle. You're managing distance, timing abilities, watching inventory space the way Resident Evil taught you to. The enemy designs are biological, organic, and unsettling in a way that has nothing in common with typical fantasy monster work. What Parasite Eve understood before most of the horror genre did is that scientific horror hits differently than supernatural horror. It's not about demons. It's about your own cells deciding they'd rather be something else. That's a specific kind of dread, and this game lands it consistently. I'll be real, the combat got repetitive in the back half. The repositioning loop is genuinely exciting for 5 hours and then starts to feel mechanical. But the atmosphere, the premise, and the enemy designs carried me through every time. If you haven't played it, start at the Opera House sequence. I'll say nothing else. Every rule, all at once. No shops, towns, or party members. No experience points in the traditional sense. No level curve, and no equipment you can buy. Vagrant Story drops you into the ancient city of Leomond as Ashley Riot, a risk breaker, an elite agent, and it commits completely to the solitude. What you have is a weapon workshop, a targeting system built around enemy anatomy, and an elemental affinity network so deep that the player community spent years fully documenting it. The combat pauses when you hold the action button and lets you aim at individual body parts. Hit the legs enough times, and a heavy knight can't close distance. Hit the arms, and it loses its weapon. Hit the head, and accuracy drops. But every chain of attacks raises your risk gauge. You hit harder, take more damage, and your accuracy drops. So every fight is a negotiation between aggression and survival. You're always deciding how far to push before you have to stop. The weapon crafting requires breaking down equipment and transferring affinities between pieces. A blade optimized against undead is nearly useless against a golem. You maintain a full purpose-built arsenal. That is not optional. What Vagrant Story understood, and what almost no game before or since has matched, is that depth in an RPG doesn't come from how many characters you control or how big the world is. It comes from how many meaningful decisions fit inside a single action. The English localization is great. The script is dense and theatrical and genuinely beautiful in ways that embarrass most games made today. I come back to this one every few years. I find something I missed every single time. If you've never played it, I'm a little jealous of what you're about to experience. Koudelka came out in 1999 and almost nobody noticed. That's a shame because it was doing something genuinely strange, trying to be Resident Evil and a strategy RPG at the same time, pulling off both without fully committing to either. You play as Koudelka, a psychic woman who ends up trapped in a Welsh monastery in 1898 alongside a monk and an aristocrat. The three of them have to survive whatever is haunting the place. Combat puts all three characters on a grid. Positioning matters, and so does direction, and resource management is punishing in a way that makes every encounter feel like it might be your last. What I'll defend against anyone who calls this game clunky, it's dialogue. These three characters genuinely despise each other for most of the game, and those conversations are actually well written. Real tension and wit. Koudelka herself is one of the most interesting protagonists in the entire PS1 library, and I am furious at how rarely she gets mentioned. But the combat encounters drag, some sections overstay their welcome, and the engine clearly couldn't handle everything it was trying to be. It's a flawed game, but it's also irreplaceable. And if you love Shadow Hearts, this is where it started. The DNA is unmistakable. Play this first, and Shadow Hearts becomes something entirely different when you get to it. Tactical RPGs usually have one story. Front Mission 3 gives you two complete ones with different characters, different missions, different political outcomes. And they split from a single decision you make so early in the game that you won't know yet what you're choosing between. You're piloting mechs. In a near-future world where corporate alliances and military blocks teeter constantly on the edge of fracture. The tactical combat is surgical. Destroy a leg and a unit can't close distance. Take out an arm and it loses whatever weapon was mounted there. Hit the cockpit enough times and the pilot is done. Every battle is a system to disassemble. The customization goes deep enough that I genuinely spent more time in the hangar between missions than I did in most games' entire campaigns. Missiles versus machine guns. High evasion scouts. Heavy armor that just absorbs salvos and keeps moving. But the thing that still gets me, 25 years later, is the in-game internet. Front Mission 3 has a fake browser, functional within the game, where you can dig up lore, unlock side missions, find information the main story never gives you directly. In 1999, on a PlayStation disc, that's a design decision that came from the future. One campaign is noticeably stronger than the other. Play it second, and you went on a high. I won't tell you which one. You'll know when you've played both. A sequel should give you what the original gave you, and ideally it's better. Chrono Cross has 45 playable characters. Most of them join through brief vignettes, a few scenes, a battle, a button press, and now you have a third-party member who is a small green chef named Rasley who speaks and rhymes. Surge, the main character, cannot speak. The plot involves parallel timelines, the nature of identity, what it means to exist as the alternate version of yourself, and the dissolution of a figure so legendary that Trigger fans read it as a betrayal. If you came expecting more of what Chrono Trigger gave you, this was specifically designed to disappoint you. That was a choice. Whether it was the right one is a conversation this community has been having for 25 years, and I don't think it's settled. The triple element system. Every character has a color alignment. All abilities draw from and fill a shared grid. and the order of what you cast ripples through battle in ways that take hours to fully understand. Is one of the most distinctive combat architectures on the system. And the Yasunori Mitsuda soundtrack is, without any argument, one of the finest game soundtracks ever recorded. I played it 4 times. I understand its story with less confidence each time I finish it. I've started to think that a feature rather than a flaw, but I genuinely can't be certain. The reduced presence of the old cast was something that its own ambitions never fully healed for a lot of players. I think that's a fair criticism. It's one I've started sitting with differently the older I get. Persona 2 Innocent Sin is about rumors. Specifically, rumors come true. Spread a story through the city, and it becomes reality. Myths crystallize into fact. The enemy exploiting this is trying to rewrite history by controlling what people believe is real. Power here isn't strength or magic or a chosen hero's destiny. It's information. The contact system is unlike anything else in the SMT library. You negotiate with demons, not to recruit them, but to spread rumors through them. You're running influence campaigns, trading information, manipulating what enemies believe about themselves to change their behavior, their drops, their disposition. It's strange, specific, and brilliant in a way the series never quite returned to. The cast is a group of high schoolers bound by a childhood pact they don't fully remember, and their relationships are drawn with more complexity than the genre usually allowed. One party member is gay. This is handled with sincerity, not as a punchline, not as a quirk, just as a fact about a person. In 1999, the caveat is that this game never came to the West on PS1. The PSP localization eventually arrived, and that's the version most people know, but something was lost in translation. Choices were made. Play the PSP version. It's your best option. Just know you're meeting a slightly different version of what this originally was. It's still unlike anything else in the library. It's still worth playing. 13 different ways someone at a Japanese development studio decided the rules didn't apply to them. What strikes me most about all of these isn't just that they were weird. It's that most of them were weird on purpose. The choices that make them hard to categorize weren't accidents or budget constraints. They were commitments. That's what the PS1 era had that's genuinely hard to replicate now. The willingness to make a structurally strange, commercially risky game and release it without knowing if anyone would get it. Some people didn't. These games are still worth getting. If you've made it to the end, drop the one from this list that hit you hardest in the comments, or the one you want to go pick up now. I read every single one. And if you want more of this, subscribe.